Another professional video. The Rocket. Okay. Find a computer. Oh, yes, a second. God. It's the foot. Whew. Special effects are killing me. Hope you folks realize what I'm going through here. Man, heart's beating like a rabbit. By popular demand. Okay, not really popular demand. I just made that part up. Get my glasses so I can see the computer. I didn't realize that I had so many facial tics and expressions. I do this a lot, you know. A lot of and it's like I was telling somebody this evening, I think I have Tourette's. I am going to tell a story about when I served in Korea. And it's a story in the winter time. Which, even though it's cooler, that seems kind of nice. This is a nice time for the year for a winter story. Tick again. I think I'll just start doing that occasionally when can I see what? That poor man. And this is probably hereditary. Sorry, son. In Korea, our barracks were Quonset huts, left over from the Korean War, I guess. And the way they were heated in the wintertime is they had a diesel fuel generator. Or thing was about the size of a 30-gallon drum. This little barrel-shaped thing, and there was a little carburetor on the side, a little regulator. You hung a 5-gallon can on the side of it. Had a little siphon that went up, and you'd pump the siphon. See, more stuff. You would pump the siphon up and down, get a siphon, and it would put fuel in the bottom, and you'd light it, and it would burn a diesel fuel. Now, in the wintertime, though, you had to be careful and get the right number of diesel fuel. There were different kinds of diesel fuel, and if you hung the wrong one, it didn't burn clean in the winter. It sooted real bad. And this happened on a regular basis. People would mix the cans up. They grab the wrong number of diesel fuel, hang it on there. And what would happen is it would soot up so bad that it would clog up with soot the stovepipe, the flue. And essentially just unburned diesel fuel. What we did to get it going again is we'd wad up a piece of paper and you'd put it in the draft and light fire to the paper, and of course it would pull the air in. See, the air would come in, whoosh, and it would light the soot that was in the flue and clean out the little stovepipe, burn it out, and generally when it got going again, it would have enough draw that it would burn hotter, and so even though it would be the wrong kind of fuel, it would burn up the soot and burn hotter, and usually you could go ahead and clean out enough and take off the wrong kind of diesel fuel and get the right one on there and get it running again. I had been stationed up on our tack site, and so I got down real late at night, real late winter night, and I just had walked on down, got to my barracks. I was the barracks sergeant. Well, I opened the door up and smoke came out of the door. Just black, sooty smoke. I couldn't, standing up, I couldn't see down the barracks. There was a little firelight on, but I couldn't see down the barracks. I had to get way down on the ground, so low you couldn't even see me. And there was clean air about a foot off of the floor. You actually had a layer of clean air, and all the rest of it was just sooty smoke. All the guys did was they just pulled the covers up over their heads. It kept on sleeping and coughing. And it wasn't like it was monoxide, but I don't know what it would take to get people out of bed. Anyway, I was finding my way to the stove, and I found the offending stove. Had a little door in the front, and I opened up the little door and looked, and of course the inside of it was just covered just thick with soot. And down it there's a little tiny fire. Little tiny fire. Still burning. Sooting. So anyway, coughing and hacking, I had my little room. It was an open barracks, double-deck bunks all the way down. But because I was barracks sergeant, I had my own little room, even though it was open on the top. I had my own little room. And I went in and got a piece of paper, wadded it up, came out, stuck it in the flue, lit it. I smoked at the time. Lit it. Watched it started burning. Kind of had my hand over my mouth. Of course, my coughing wasn't going to wake up anybody, obviously, because they were coughing and hacking and had their covers up over their heads, the wool blankets. Well, the paper did light. I'm just glad that now that I think about it, that the entire atmosphere didn't light. There was so much soot in the room. Anyway, it started burning, which was kind of unusual. Usually it was a pretty fast process, but it just kind of burned and kind of slowly. The little damper was probably about this long. The little intake on the stovepipe, and then it actually hit the stovepipe. Well, then it started making this zzz sound. With kind of a fiery zzz. Think of that sound with fire. Well, in the dark, I see this red glow forming where I'd stuck the paper in the pipe. It was burning that hot. And then I was watching the red glow slowly spread, starting to burn the soot and burning very hot. And it was spreading. It was spreading up. It was spreading down. Well, I had a few seconds to think here, and I thought, boy, that is a hot fire. It's turning the fire red, the flame. And I realized that when it hit the stove, there was a lot of soot in there. And it was very hot flame heading for it. I realized then that it was time to clear the barracks. I'm hollering, get up, get up, get out of bed, get up, get up. I can't repeat some of the language, but needless to say, it wasn't pretty. And nobody was moving. They was just rolling over and pulling the covers up even more. And I'm watching the fire, and it's going, and it's getting louder, and it's getting louder, and it's getting closer to the main barrel of the stove, and I'm trying to get the guys up by the door, and we had one guy, and I can't remember his name. I think it was Flash or something like that. He managed to actually pull the covers back and lean forward. He was looking out at the middle aisle going down the barracks, and he was looking there just about the time that the flame, I saw it hit the barrel. It literally blew up. It blew the door down, not completely off, but blew the little door off, so just hanging. And it shot a fireball down the barracks. Just a big wad of fire went down the barracks in front of this guy's face. I mean, can you imagine waking up about 2 o'clock in the morning and seeing a fireball shoot in front of your face? He could have found Jesus, and I don't know, because he had fire waking him up. But anyway, it ignited all that stuff, and then it spread up the deal, and it was drawing so much air. I mean, you could hear this whooshing sound, and I'm just so happy it was going up the stovepipe. You could hear this whooshing sound feeding this fire that was in there, because I'm telling you, that little fire that was down there in the bottom was in a lot of diesel fuel. The entire stove turned cherry red. And about that time, the CQ, the guy in charge of the quarters, he came running in kind of wild-eyed. And he was like, "What happened? What happened?" I said, "Well, what do you mean?" I couldn't figure out how he knew. He wasn't in the barracks to see the fireball. He said, "Well, the roof, it shot fire." He said, "Fire shot out of the roof." He said, the chimney took off like a rocket." Went out and looked, and it was gone. We never did find that chimney. The little pipe that stuck out the roof that had a little cone cap on it. It did. It made just a perfect rocket. It shot off clean right at the top of the Quonset hut. Nothing there. flame was shooting out the top, by the way. The stove got so hot, I had to stay up and watch it. And needless to say, the soot cleared out real fast, being sucked in that stove out of the entire barracks. But it was kind of a beautiful thing. It was a beautiful coral color. But the metal, we was afraid it was liquefying because the top of the stove was just kind of moving up and down. It was so hot. Just kind of boom, boom, boom. And the fire was raging, and it was real warm in the barracks that night, though. We didn't even bother to pull off the diesel can. We was afraid to get close to the stove. I'm touching that thing. Let it blow. Not my problem, Sarge. Because I was telling him, you should get that. You know. So anyway, everything settled down. But that also reminds me, and I don't know why, of a story that took. This was way before. This was when I was a private, and I was actually a switchboard operator working at I was inside a blockhouse, a secure area, and the one thing I have noticed, certain people are invisible. Now, when I was at the age of 11, I knew I could do that. I could become invisible. It was the fact of being but not being. You were there but unnoticed. I think I may have mentioned, if you've seen some of my previous stories, that I could literally, I could sit for hours and stare. I could do any number of things for hours, and not move, and just kind of fade into the background. Worked out great when I'd follow my granddad up into the pool hall. There was a good story. And because I could just kind of disappear. Heard a lot of great stuff that way. Pull it in. Focus. Remember, I can't edit, so I have to focus. So anyway, I was sitting to my switchboard operator, and our commanding officer came in. It was a colonel. I can't mention his name because, well, I could, but it wouldn't be right. His name was Trussell. Anyway, I don't know what his name was. Might have been a guy in Korea. Anyway, he was talking to our sergeant. I got to think of a name for this guy, Sergeant Johnley. Yeah. Sergeant Johnley. This is a great guy, by the way. Anyway, he said, Sergeant, I'd like to talk to you. He said, certainly, Colonel. He said, well, he said, this will be off the cuff. He said, I've got some questions, and he said, I'd like to know what you think, which kind of gives you the idea of what Sergeant Johnley's stature was, that our commanding officer would come over and talk to him. I think he was staff sergeant. And he said, well, I've got some... He said, I'm going to try for general. He said, I'd like to know what you think my chances are. What you think about me making general. And he said, and I'm over there because I know the sergeant. I'm trying to be one with the switchboard. I'm just kind of trying to disappear again. I'm just trying to not be there. And he said, permission to speak freely, sir? So, well, of course, he said, I want your honest opinion, Sergeant. He said, so, yeah, we're permission to speak freely. I want a frank exchange. Very professional. I want a frank exchange. He said, you haven't got a chance, sir. This is what the colonel wanted to hear. He was taken somewhat aback, and he said, well, why is that, Sergeant? He said, you don't see no fat general, sir. Commanding officer was a little overweight, being kind. I just hope I could remain a private, just because I was in the room. And he kind of nodded. He said, okay. I said, well, he said, because the conversation was over, he said, thank you, Sergeant. He said, I appreciate your candor. And something about we'll talk more later or something. And he left. And I finally started breathing again at the switchboard. I was like, I was stressing out more than, than Sergeant John Lee was, just because I was in the room. And I didn't know what happened to privates. I figured, no bodies. No, we don't know what happened to him. He just kind of disappeared. He went away. That's what the letter said to home. He just went away. Anyway, we was talking. I said, King, Merry Christmas, Sarge. I said, did you see how red he turned? He said he wanted the truth. And he said that was the truth. He said he's got all the qualifications, and I'm sure he told him that at some other more appropriate time. He said he has all the qualifications, but he said he already knows that. And but he said that if he looks around and looks at the men that's over him, he said, you quite literally right now in the Army, you're not seeing any fat generals. Doesn't look good. And to the commanding officers, to his credit, he went on a diet that week. And this actually reminds me of a story out of Boeing. We had a manager, and what was unusual is he had a full beard and wore gold chains. And it wasn't even a month and in his department, all the guys under him were growing beards and wearing gold chains. So I guess the moral of the story is, if you're going somewhere, look at the guys over you. See how they act. See what they do. Because people tend to promote in kind. And I suppose there's a kind of a life lesson there, but the one I had at Boeing is we saw a lot of promotions made based on who you drank with. I worked for a lot of alkies at Boeing, and some of them were good guys when they were sober. But that was the promotion. They drank in the right places. So I guess we would like to hope that the bosses out there have a high moral standard. Professional men, professional women. But, well, if your boss walks like an Egyptian,